Well, hello, teeth in. Hello, everybody. That was a good start, wasn't it?
Put your teeth in, Kim.
Get the teeth in, yes. This week we are joined by Janet Poole, who was one of the Sown Bees in season 5. Hello, Janet. It's lovely that you've come on to the Sown Bee Natter. Now, a lot of people won't know who you are, but if you would like to explain exactly who you are and the fact that you're on that season 5 and where you got to, because you did really well.
Hello, I'm Janet. Lots of people know me as Janny. I was on season 5 of the Sewing Bee, so I'm an old bee in every respect. I was very pleased and very relieved to get as far as the quarterfinals. We didn't have quite so many shows in season 5 because we started off with 10 of us rather than 12. So I got to the quarterfinals. I was convinced that I was going to be out a long time before that. So it was a big relief to get there. And also it was quite a relief to be able to step back and watch it from afar as well once I was out. But I only missed 7 and 8. So that was not too much to miss. So,
oh, bless you. And we've also joined by the lovely Alistair MacDonald. Good morning, Alistair.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are or when you're watching.
Exactly. And that is literally when you're watching, because we do have people watching from Australia, America, all over the globe. So thank you for joining us. And what I'm going to do straight away, Alistair, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We do have regular giveaways. Alistair is, and Lizzie last week has a giveaway. Now, the people who won, who were outside the UK, we are going to honour it was the wrap dress pattern, and we're going to contact you and honour that. But moving forward, because it's so difficult with surface mail and actually getting things out the UK now, if you're a winner, then please let us know. But the winning items will only be posted to the UK and Northern Ireland. So I'm really sorry. It's not our doing. It's just the logistics is a little bit more difficult. But if I do pick somebody out that's a winner and they're not going to get a physical item, I can send them over a PDF pattern or something like that, Alistair, so people won't lose out. Okay,
Exactly.
So this may as well tell everybody what this week's giveaway is.
Yes, I'll put my notebook down. Try not to lose my pen. I'm precariously perched on this chair. So we've got it's a little polycotton fat quarter pack. There's 3 to give away. You've got some bumblebees there. You've got some butterflies, some 2 lots of strawberries, and you've got another sort of one with sort of like bunnies and things like that on there. So you've got those. So there's 3 of those. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 fat quarters in the pack. They're they're really, really pretty. So they're a polycotton pack. So all you need to do is leave a comment, and it can be absolutely anything. Just leave a comment like you guys have been doing before. And then the winners will be chosen at random, and Kim will announce them next week. Now, just in case, when Kim does contact you, it's not a scam. You have actually genuinely won something. So please, if your name is read out and Kim does contact you, don't worry if you haven't caught up and watched. You don't have to contact us. Kim will find a way. She's very good at that. She will find a way, and she'll find a way to contact you. So don't worry about that. But Kim will liaise with you and get your contact details.
Isn't that made a lovely little pouch out of the strawberry one that you've got there in the fat quarter pack? Yes, I won't tell you what's inside. It's my personal bit. Anyway, moving on to this week's episode. It was the reduce, reuse, recycle. And we went straight into the made to measure. No, that's a lie. We went straight into the pattern challenge. I was writing my notes on the train. This was a no waste jacket. Now, to explain no waste, you're literally given a piece of fabric and there is nothing left over. That's the idea. It had to have 4 patch pockets and flaps. It had to have a button placket and a hem. The neck facing, it had to be top stitched at the collar. It was a workwear jacket, and they really stressed what fabric that they should consider to use. Patrick described it as a fabric with bulk. I would say a little bit more sort of stability. And maths was obviously the big thing. So I'm going to go straight to you, Janet. What did you think of that particular challenge?
Well, I think the idea of a no waste pattern in principle, it's very good, but in practice, I think if you're using all of the fabric to put into a garment that's going to be shapeless and unattractive, I think I'd rather cut little bits out of it and make it a nicer shape. On the basis that I've probably used it anyway. So I'm a bit ambivalent about the whole idea of it. I haven't seen a no waste pattern that I particularly want to make. I think it probably is not my style. However, the thought of having to use maths and draw the pattern directly onto the fabric is quite terrifying in that situation. And I think who fell foul of it? It was Jess, wasn't it, who got her maths wrong? So often I like to prepare stuff on paper. So often I'll get my measurements wrong, and so I scribble out lines. And the time constraints added to that. It's a wonder nobody else, well, apart from also Gaynor, got her sleeves the wrong length. But it's a recipe for disaster. And I think they did extremely well, all of them, to get something out. You could see on Jess's finished garment that there were one or two things that went awry because of her original mistake. But what a pressured situation that would be, much more so than being given a pattern and cutting it out normally.
Exactly, and I do think that the math was the starting point, and even Stuart, who's an engineer, I remember he went 150 divided by 4, and you could see his brain. But it's the pressure of the cameras and
absolutely
the stress must have been awful.
Absolutely. I noticed that Kit said very early on, I got a degree in maths.
Yeah.
So he was obviously going to be okay on the maths. So.
I might not have said that, because if you'd made a mistake at the end, you would have looked a bit of an idiot, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
I laughed because when Gaynor said, "Oh, it's 30 something," and it was just one of those things, because it is the ultimate pressure challenge on the math.
Absolutely. I'm glad I didn't have that to do.
Yeah, exactly. Alistair, what was your thoughts on that one?
When they said what they were going to do, I mean, I get the principle and I get what the theme of this week's show was. I'm going to be honest. This week's outing is so far is not my favorite one. Just because I think it's quite limiting, like in terms of like creativity, when you're having to use already made garments. Just one point on that, like for instance, when you bias cut a dress, once you've set it into a seam, altering a bias cut dress, shorten it, doing whatever it is, the outcome is going to be really, really bad. You can't unpick a bias cut dress and try and put it back together. It will never sit back right at all. Fabric in that sense doesn't have it has a memory to where it last journeyed. I felt it was really difficult, actually. Although, I mean, look, I know waist jacket. I mean, a lot of menswear, for instance, there's different. So in the industry, so a women's wear pattern cutter can actually do both. So women's wear pattern cutters can actually cut for men. However, menswear pattern cutters can't cut for women. It's just a general thing, because women's wear pattern cutters are used to lumps and bumps and shapes and bringing things in, and the shapes are very, very different. Whereas menswear is pretty much what this challenge was. It's very flat. It's two-dimensional. So a lot of menswear pattern cutters do struggle. Menswear has to rely particularly on detailing. So you'll get like a little nuance of in a pocket or something like that. So menswear is a very different beast to, say, women's wear. I thought they did incredibly, incredibly well. I thought it was a bit unfair. They only got an extra half an hour on this challenge. Half an hour when if you've never had to draft a pattern before, then that's fine. Now, this comes from, so for instance, everyone knows I started my House of Alistair business on Savile Row. So I was there next door to Patrick Grant. This is what the tailors do in Savile Row. So they fold out the cloth and they mark directly onto the fabric. They don't necessarily have blocks or create a paper pattern before. It's all drawn onto the fabric. And so a tailor can go to any country, any part of the world, whatever. And it's a bit like a hairdresser. Is if you can cut hair, doesn't matter which language the country speaks, you can still cut hair wherever you go. So it's a very good skill set to sort of have. But I thought it was really difficult. In 4 hours, they had to essentially get their head around a load of words, and that's very limited in itself, because some people are better with pictures. So for instance, I'm much better with a picture because my brain analyzes it and I can see where things are going. Whereas when you've got a lot of words, it just looks so daunting, and it's not a sort of a step by step. And then you get the helpful pattern pieces like the collar and the pocket. So yeah, I thought it was really, really, really difficult. I mean, they all did a very sterling job, and don't forget they had to put buttonholes in there and sew buttons, and they had to create a placket as well. I think if they'd given them just the pattern, and told them the principle of it, and then critiqued the sewing, because there wasn't an awful lot of critiquing on the focus that they were doing, which was creating the pattern on the fabric. So I thought it was really challenging and difficult, but hats off to them. I mean, they all did incredibly well. And as I say, if they've never done that before, well, they certainly have now.
And may never do it again. The other thing that was very noticeable, and I know, you know, Kit's was beautiful at the end. He was the only one that chose the pattern fabric. So for example, if you're doing top stitching on a pattern fabric, it's less noticeable. And I don't know how close they went to look at the stitching, but the stitching disappears, whereas the rest of the contestants used a block colour. Janet, what was your thoughts on that aspect of it?
I would have gone for something patterned for exactly that reason, because I like the route of least resistance. So anything that's going to hide any mistakes. I mean, Kit's really good at top stitching, isn't it? And we saw that later on. But I've got the picture of his jacket up in front of me now, and you literally can't see anything on it other than just across the top of the pocket. I thought that was a very wise move on his part. And I thought it was interesting that the choice of fabric through all of them shows up the ones that made the better choices, the fabrics with more body, because those garments definitely looked better.
I think this is one of the challenges that I would have liked to have seen, because the first thing they had to do was to measure out 137 centimetres. That's not easy to measure off a bolt of fabric. I think I would have preferred them all to have had those pre-cut. And maybe this is one of the challenges where they should have all had the same amount of fabric to start with. So that was one thing less, because when you get a bolt of fabric, the start of the fabric may not be straight. And what they needed to do was not just do a straight cut at that 137 centimetres across the bolt, and they're 150 centimetres wide, I would presume. They also needed to make sure that that bottom edge was straight as well. So
I suppose the contra to that would be that it removes the choice of fabric. If they're presented with a piece of fabric, it removes their element of choosing the right sort of fabric.
So, Janet, can I ask you, when you were on Series 5, obviously fabric is a major part. Were you given any guidance with regards to stay away from that particular shelf, or?
No, only what you see in the programme when Esme gives out the pattern, and they give a little bit of guidance as to what you should choose. Our very first one in the first show we did was a wriggle dress, and it needed a woven fabric. And I thought, oh, wiggle dresses, they're tight. Maybe something with a bit of stretch would be good. But it turns out that was not what they wanted. And Patrick actually commented on when he came round the first time. But it was too late by then. I'd already cut it. But it was a cotton with a bit of stretch, but it didn't have much. But a limited amount of guidance.
Right. And that's, you know, we talk about, yes, this is an entertainment programme, and these are home sewers. These are not professional sewers. That's the criteria for entering the sewing bee. And along with all the tools, because we spoke to Mitch Bridgewater, who was on season 8, and he said sometimes that time pressure, and then you have an array of tools in front of you, including the rotary cutter, which Alistair and I both, you know, find horrendous when we see them cutting around. But you feel obliged to use that, not to have that guidance, because choosing fabric in itself is such a skill.
Yes.
In relation to a pattern.
I think also that's one of the things they're expecting of viewers and contestants, is to be able to choose something that's appropriate. Because even now, when I'm making stuff for myself, I sometimes choose a fabric that is not as good, you know, not as appropriate as it might be. And as far as the tools are concerned, we were able to take our own toolkit. I think, I can't remember exactly how they expressed it, but I think it was your favourite sewing bits and pieces.
Right.
And I'd taken a full selection of my favourite sewing things. Did you notice that not one of them used a rotary cutter on this challenge? They all used shearing.
Yes, yes, I was quite pleased with that. I like it came out later on, I have to say, but I was very pleased because I mean, Alistair, you probably heard him say already that and we've had so many comments saying how precise that cut is with your scissors rather than a rotary cutter, and the fact that fabric moves as well.
Yeah. I mean, scissors. I mean, for instance, scissors. You don't push scissors through the work. You work the scissors. Let the scissors do the work for you. That's their purpose. It creates so little drag when you use shears. And especially, you don't have to go out and buy the most expensive shears either. You know, there's some really, really, really good ones. Just make sure that there's something that suits your budget, and you know, choose whatever your budget is. Try and buy the highest that you can buy within that budget. That's what I would suggest. And also make sure that you keep them away from husbands, partner, also
children.
People will use them because they see them on the desk and go, oh, I'll just use that. I had somebody, in fact, it was actually on TV, it was a card crafter. I had all my kit laid out, and this lady decided to open a bottle of nail glue with my very expensive shears. And I was like, what are you doing? And it was like, oh, I'm just borrowing your scissors. I said, no, they're not just scissors. And they were like, oh, and I was like, all right, I'll use your electric mandel thing that you cut out dies, and I'll put me washing through that. See how you like that, you know. But getting back onto this sort of like challenge, I think it was Stuart that used corduroy.
Yes.
If you're going to be sewing under pressure and in time, do not use velvet or cord. They have what we call a nap, which is the technical name for a hair, which means even though it's short, when you put pattern pieces together, it will automatically jut and slip. So you have very little control over that. Hiya. So thank you very much. Sorry, had the big ribbon delivered. So literally it will slip. So the best way of counteracting that is when you've got your pattern pieces flat, baste it. Do not pin it, baste it, especially with corduroys and with velvets. What it does is it keeps it together and it keeps it flat. As I've said before, a straight pin going in creates a concurve. You don't want that at all. Also, when they were doing the pockets, they were all with their irons trying to get that. Now, you'll be there forever. If it's a rounded corner, put a tiny running stitch on the sewing machine, a size 5, and especially a size 5 on a domestic machine is really wide compared to my industrial, or do a little running stitch yourself. And what you want to do is you just want to pull that in, and it will create that curve on that seam allowance, and then press it. And get a book or just something cold, but something heavy. Could be an old iron, or even your iron if it's cold, or even a saucepan from the kitchen, because it's metal. Lay that on top and leave it to cool completely. What that does is it draws the heat out of it, but it sets the fabric and it keeps it nice and flat. A bit like when you used to do flower press and you used to put it in a book. Yeah. If you had gone out and found a pretty flower as you were reading, and you put it in the back of the book to remind you of you finished that book when you were away on holiday or something. So those are just really small little tips like that. And also Gayna's tip about using a cardboard template to put inside. If you use that in combination with that little stitch, you're going to get really, really clean lines. Because in the industry, they have a thing called a jig. So it's a piece of metal that you put the fabric flat. And these are people who don't sew. They put in a machine. They put the fabric flat. Another arm comes down the machine, and then it pushes it into the mold, and then you pull the thing down. You press a button. It steams it. You pull that out. You then put 2 layers on, and you put it in another machine and it machine stitches perfectly round. That's commercial design, but you're talking about doing a run of 25,000 pieces.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing on this challenge that I thought was, you know, an additional stress for them was the buttons. They had to put 5 buttons on and get them evenly spaced, and time was against them at that point anyway. Janet, have you got any tips about spacing for your buttons? Because obviously they had the 5 and they had the, you know, the area that they had to put them in. I'm trying to think whose button it wasn't sitting quite. I think it was gay. There was somebody's button was just slightly off, so it looked more like a V-neck rather than the one to the button at the very top. Was it?
Oh, it was Kaz. It was Kaz.
Is Kaz?
The top button was about here.
Yes, button wrong. Yes.
Yeah. I, from my perspective, making clothes for me, I always place my first button here at my bust level, you know, to stop anything gaping. And then I will measure and work them out. And I use a ruler. I use an ordinary tape measure, and it's a process of elimination. I work it out by maths. So I don't have any tips other than that's what I do every single time. I have to say, I noticed that some people, Stuart only got 4 buttons on.
Yeah.
And that's a really easy mistake. You're doing the buttons and the buttonholes right at the end. You're running out of time massively. On one thing I made, I think I sewed a button on, and it probably only had 1 thread on. So as soon as somebody looked at it, it fell off. It's a huge point of stress at that point. And they talk about, have you seen those tools that are like scissors that expand?
Yes.
I've never used one of those, but I think that must be an easier way to space buttons.
Yeah, you can do
I don't know what it's called.
Sorry?
I don't know what it's called. Do you know what it's called?
It is for button placement. It looks like a zigzag.
Yeah.
I actually haven't got one to hand, but what you can do is expand it. So if you wanted 5 buttons, you would just expand it across your space and you would get your even spacing.
So, yeah, you'd find your position for your top button, position for your bottom button, and then use that. Yes, work it out. Yeah.
So they
I
are
do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. I think sorry, Alistair.
For instance, in commercial design, so the buttons and buttonholes are the last thing that get processed on the garment because it's the main stitching that goes on, and then the plackets are then the buttonholes are then put on. However, if you're doing it at home, this is what I don't understand. And a lot of commercial patterns ask you to do everything else, and then the last thing you do is you then have to put buttonholes in. Whereas my way round is make the fronts up first.
Yeah.
Do the plackets, then do the buttonholes. Get that difficult part out of the way first. The rest of the garment is just easy put together, and then do your collar. When you've actually achieved that, lay the garment out flat, put the under placket underneath. You can practice it with a shirt, and then where your buttonholes are, put that over the top with the buttonholes open. And then what you do is where you've got your buttonholes, you then get a piece of chalk or a little pencil or whatever you need to use and go right in the middle of the actual buttonhole and put your marks where your buttonholes have been made. The reason for that, if you then do the same set of measures on the other side, you might have gone a little bit longer on one buttonhole, and it means you're not getting them bang on. Also, when you're sewing the button on, you always sew the button, which looks a bit odd, but you sew it not directly in the middle, but you sew it a little bit so towards your armpit ever so slightly, just because when the button goes in, the placket it's stressed, so it wants to open up a little bit. So it's trial and error. It's easier to move the button than it is to redo a whole placket with buttonholes.
Yes,
Trust
exactly.
me, I've had to do that.
I don't know if you can see that. That's
it. Yeah.
That's the buttonhole. They're just called buttonhole placement or buttonhole spacers. So that's what we're referring to. If you want to make life a little bit easier, they're quite inexpensive as well, actually. Sort of around about the £6 to £7 mark. So that's useful. But it was just another thing I thought on top, you know, with the time constraint, with the math and the sewing and everything else. That was just another thing that they had to throw in as well. So I thought it was a really difficult challenge. And Kit, again, very canny, put odd coloured buttons on, and so therefore it didn't draw your eye to anything if it was out of lining because of the pattern fabric. So on that particular challenge, Jess, God love her, was last. She was 9th. And that was down to, from the very first moment she started cutting, she'd made a mistake with her maths and couldn't really get out of it. Followed by Gaynor, Dan was 6th, Stuart 5th, Kaz 4th, Yasmin was 3rd, Ola, who I thought was very brave on this particular challenge because she had those beautiful pink buttons and the top stitching, and then Kit won, and the feedback was great fabric and well made.
Yeah.
Janet, did you agree with the order of those?
Yes, I did, generally speaking. Yes. I thought, as you said, Ola was very brave, and I thought it was a bit unkind of Esme to point out that she'd done her top stitching on her collar the wrong way around, because she'd got her top stitching thread on the underside of the collar. But I would argue that I would always wear a jacket with the collar turned up anyway. So, and you can't have top stitching. You wouldn't put top stitching thread top and bottom. But I noticed she did have a matching thread on the underneath, the matching coloured thread. So.
She did, yes. And just on that point, just for anybody who's wondering what we're talking about with top stitching thread is thicker, and so therefore you would avoid, as Janet said, putting it in the bottom bobbin. You can match it with a 40 or a 50 weight, but you'll find your top stitching thread, 40 or 50, your top stitching thread will have a bigger number. It could be a 60 or even a 70, depending on how thick. No, go the other way, Kim. Sorry. To confuse people, thread, the thicker the thread, the lower the number, the thinner the thread, the higher the number. Get it right. It's needles, that's the other way around. So you'll find that your top stitching thread will be a 30 weight potentially, but don't put your 30 unless you have a speciality bobbin. There are some machines where you can actually put your decorative stitch, so it does come on the underside, and you put your thicker thread in the bottom bobbin, but you must have a speciality bobbin holder specific for your machine to be able to do that. But yes, so moving, did you agree with the order? Because I thought Ola was a real close win for me.
Yeah, Kit's, it was really difficult to see it. With that bearing in mind, oh, have we lost Janet?
We've lost Janet temporarily, so she'll come back, I'm sure. Just fed up with her.
What can we say? You know, all this. She's obviously got a WI meeting to go to or something like that, because I'm sure you two are kindred spirits. Because every time I call you, I'm stuck to the dub. I've got to go to WI meeting. But yeah, I thought. Oh, another quick tip, just while we're waiting on Janet coming back. Make sure that you measure twice, cut once.
Yeah. Hi, Janet.
Sorry,
Hi, Janet.
Don't worry. You've missed nothing. We just thought that you might have had to, you're bored with us. Gone off somewhere else.
I had a call come in and I had to decline it, and then I lost you in the process.
Oh, bless. Don't worry about it. The joys of technology.
Sorry.
Alistair's just been.
I was just saying the golden rule is when you're doing anything is measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
You will not go wrong, and think methodically. And if you're stressed and if the timers will have you walk away for 5 minutes, 5 minutes is not the end of the world. And if you have to come back, sometimes actually parking it and coming back the next day and looking at it with fresh eyes is actually more time productive than actually sitting there trying to get it right. Maybe go home, have a drink, sort of have a bit of a rest, get up really early, then come back to it.
And that's the joy that we have, that unfortunately none of the Sewn Bees have that.
No,
have that luxury.
Don't have that luxury. No,
oh, bless them.
No.
I bet there's times that when you were on, Janet, you think, I wish I could just go out and have a cup of coffee in the line.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll go on to the next challenge, which was the transformation challenge. Now, they did stress, I think they've been listening to us, Alistair, because they did say that all the tents had been retrieved from festivals. They'd been abandoned in festivals. So that was, at least they were recycled. They were allowed one tent. It was to be a fun and wearable festival outfit. and they wanted them to use as much of the tent, including the hardware on the tent, as possible. Now, Janet, is it really a race to the first tent? Because Kit's fabric on his tent was amazing, and everybody else's had boring tent colours.
They appeared to be only one fancy tent, didn't they? I couldn't see any more. Yes, it is basically. It's whoever gets the nice one. We had a tent challenge as well. We had to make. I think we made dog coats out of our tents, and they were genuinely used tents, and you could tell that mine had been used because it had evidence on it.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Which lovely. Yeah. So I cut around that bit. But yes, it is very much a race. It usually there's a lot of choice, but there wasn't in that case. I think Kit got the only decorative one, didn't he?
It seemed to be. I mean, there may have been other ones, but I mean, you must have to have sharp elbows to get them out. And
Yes.
Was there any snatching? Was there, I want that one? And
not in my experience.
Right.
No. People were prepared. If you'd got something and you wanted something else, people were often prepared to swap. One of our pattern challengers actually used old shirts, and we had to choose 3 or 4 shirts, and I wanted ones that coordinated very closely. I'd chosen a navy blue theme, and I was short of one, and I did negotiate with somebody to let me have one of theirs.
Right.
So, I suppose it must depend very much on the group and the individuals.
Yes, of course. And particularly this challenge, it stood out. The pattern fabric definitely stood out compared to the rest of them. So I think if that had been me as the producers or the production company, I wouldn't have put that patterned one in. I would have found another plain one, either select patterned ones or make them all a block colour. But it filled my heart with joy because my little Georgie champion there did really well on this one. Anyway, Janet, what did you think of their challenge this week?
I thought to actually make a festival outfit for me would be particularly difficult because I've never been to a festival and I don't know what you would wear. I've got the lineup here in front of me, and it's quite a spectacular selection of odd things. And I thought your little Geordie champion, his was beautiful, but goodness me, I don't think I'd wear that.
Well, I certainly wouldn't.
I would.
But some of the others I would. Kit's dress I would have worn. And then that's it. Those are the only 2 that I would observe in that selection. Oh, I also liked the red one. Who was it? Who made the pink one with the crossy straps? Was it?
That was Yasmin.
Yasmin. I really liked that, and I thought this scooted past that rather quickly.
It was very conscious of the exposure around the boobie area, and that's why the webbing across.
Absolutely, I thought that was really clever. I'm amazed that Dan could have made. What did he make? 1, 2. He made 5 separate pieces, didn't he? In 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
That's incredible. But the whole thing just amazes me. I was dreading the transformation challenge when I went, because I'm a preparing person, and so I don't do things by the seat of my pants. And I really enjoyed it. It was a fun interlude in between 2 really serious challenges, and that was the bit that really I enjoyed, the fun bit of it. The 90 minutes, it's just a ridiculous amount of time to actually make one garment in, let alone 5 pieces.
I know.
But, so I thought it was very successful. I really liked Kaz's dress, grey dress as well. I thought that was really nice.
Well, I did because it had a wine bottle pocket.
Yes.
Which I thought was very good.
But I'm just amazed when I think of the things that I made, and well, they're not meant to be nicely finished, but to produce interesting garments is a real achievement in that time.
I also think that, though, as the seasons have gone on, and obviously we're in season 11, you would be foolish not to have watched all the previous seasons if you've gone on. So the likes of yourself at the beginning of this sewing bee journey had less resources.
Yes.
Have evolved, particularly the transformation challenge. It's evolved over the seasons. So I do think that to a degree, the contestants may have, and I'm you know, may have an idea of the wacky things that they can come up with and the wacky things they're asking you to produce. So you probably would do a little bit more preparation or thought about it. I don't know.
Yes. I think when we were preparing for Series 5, we only got the force immediately before us, and the very early ones, transformation challenges, were not like this. They were change the neck on a shirt or alter a skirt. So we didn't have much to go on. But things are coming round again. A lot of the same sorts of things are coming round again. So yes, they can see what to do. How much you can prepare, I really don't know. A lot of them do bikini tops, don't they? So maybe they've thought about, if it's this, I could do that. Which is, if I was going on now, I would have a stock set of things that I was going to make.
Yeah.
Because you can adapt them to most of the challenges.
Yeah, that's interesting, that, because like you say, the bikini tops are definitely a thing. They certainly have been on this season. There's been 2 or 3 in the challenges. Yes, you can practice that. Now, this is not Alistair's favourite challenge, the best of times.
No.
But what did you think of this particular in this episode? That I thought was quite a hard one.
Well, I don't necessarily think it was a difficult challenge in terms of a transformation. Bear in mind, you've got a whole tent. And as you saw, Kit and quite a few others, I mean, when you apply draping and create volume and drama and shape and that kind of thing, everyone goes, oh. But as soon as you make something that's, say, simple and all the sewing lines are visible and everything like that, they go right into it and start critiquing it. So I don't think it's necessarily... if we had seen a load of things that had been draped and sort of like Kit-esque, then that's what they've done. You know, they've used a draping technique, but you've got a lot of fabric in one tent, even a 2-man tent. I thought Esme's comment again around about color, like grey. You dumped a load of old, tents on the floor, and she only could pick what she actually picked. I mean, I don't know if there was another lime green or bright pink one there, but I'm sure she wouldn't have ordinarily have chosen, you know, a sort of a silvery grey tent. I mean, I've not seen very many silvery grey tents. They always seem to be sort of like foresty kind of colours or a blue. So it's not. Look, these challenges aren't my favourite, but I thought they, you know, especially Dan, I thought actually, and it's interesting because also I don't know which part of this show, but Patrick, and it is probably in the edit, but Kaz, they quite clearly said, it's very nice, but it's not what we asked for. And I'm thinking, where was that comment when they were trying to do Versace-esque week? It was like, there was no way that blue gingham dress looked anything like any collection Versace would produce or anything like that. So it's very, the judging, the way it's edited, it's all still very patchy and up and down.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know how you've edited one week, then you shouldn't really have maybe put that comment on, because you can't judge someone by saying, well, that's not what we asked for, or the level of what they did. I didn't really think many of them really used, like, for instance, like the zips in a really like interesting way. It was very much the lace up back again and stuff. But I did like the pink one with the little the noughts and crosses game on the
that was Yasmin's.
Yeah, I thought that was actually really, really nice. Was it the color that drew me to it? I don't really know, but I just think the see-throughness, I thought club wear, I thought actually that really fits the brief. I thought that was absolutely spectacular, but there was a big emphasis on it had to be wearable.
Yes. The other thing was that they did say festivals. It could be a food festival. It could be a music festival. I suppose it could be the book festival. Now, Kaz's grey ball gown, because that's what it was. Who's to say what kind of festival you go to? I think when you're saying festival wear, we all assume it's musical festival. It's your big outrageous outfits, but they're very. I don't think you would wear that in a food festival necessarily. So it was quite a broad description of what they could make.
I think compared with the other garments, Kaz's wasn't very wacky. I think probably that's what they meant. But on the other hand, you said it could be any kind of a festival, and that would be worn, would be quite comfortable wandering around a country type festival, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. Can you imagine going to a book festival wearing Dan's, which was fabulous? You wouldn't, would you? You know, choose the right festival. So
yeah. I mean, there's a festival called Hay, which is all, you know, they have poets there and they have all sorts. But then of an evening, Kaz's would have fitted right in if that's the look that you're going for. I mean, you wouldn't stand too close to the bonfire because you go up in a heartbeat. But you know, one spark and it's over. You know, but yeah, I don't know. I think they've just got to be, when you've got a certain list of principles that you're scoring people against, you cannot deviate from that. It's unfair. You've got to critique every single one exactly the same. I know we're seeing a very short snippet of the edit because obviously, you know, other contestants have told us, and maybe Janet can confirm, you get, you know, sometimes 20 minutes, half an hour of a critique of your piece.
Yes, they do look at them very closely. And then also we went out of the room for quite a long time, and we would go and have a cup of tea or refreshments while they're looking very closely at the garments. So they do have a good look. And we never got to know what the lists of criteria were that they wanted for any particular garment. So we never knew what that was. So, and the other thing I'd like to say, but people mention a lot about Esme's like or dislike of various colours. And I don't think, if she says, I don't like grey, I don't think that would let her mark anybody down, because she's a professional judge. She's a professional person who knows about these kinds of things. And I never felt that if I'd made something in a colour that she didn't like, that I'd disadvantaged myself.
Right.
I never got that impression.
I think what they should do then, this is my personal opinion, is when they put the tents in, send the judges in and say, is there any of those colours that really offend you? Take those out and put colours in that they like. And that would eliminate that particular comment of, I don't like the colour.
Yeah.
Particularly on this transformation. And send them in first. And then, like you say, if you've only got a limited number of tents, and they are what they are, and you're last, you know, last there, then you have to deal with, and sometimes it's very difficult. I know on a personal level, we all work in a palette of fabrics that we like working with, because sewing is a pleasure. If you like what you're doing, you're going to finish it and you're going to enjoy the process. And I tend to sew because I enjoy sewing rather than the finished item. I enjoy that process. But and I've had to teach myself over the years, particularly when I had the shop, to go outside my little world of colours. But if you go to my fabric stash now, it's still, you can see I'm working in that palette of colours. I'm not going to work in certain ones, which are lovely, but they're not for me. So that is very, very personal. So,
I think maybe it's whether it's in the edit or whether or not it's the producers or whatever it is. Once all the footage is in the can, as they say, you know, there's people sat there in front of screens and they're editing, they're trying to cram all the footage down into a 40 to 50 minute program. But consistently throughout, since Esme's been there, and also Patrick, you know, this big thing about this season, it's all about, you know, Esme started it, now Patrick's sort of like following. It's all about putting nuances of the colour and the detail elsewhere in the garment to marry it up and to team it up. It's there's those little, you know, there are those little critiques. That's a design element that you don't like. That's not to do with the actual sewing capability. And there's been several people over the series that have gone out, not necessarily under technical ability. It's just, it was either their time to go because they were too slow, or it was just the fact that, so I don't see a lot of, in comparison, I see a lot of the edit is consistently about Esme doesn't like the color. They go on about how Esme loves a bow. So every season, somebody, you know, puts bows everywhere, it's a bit sort of like, well, and they make a big thing about, oh, you're trying to get on Esme's good side, I like a big bow. Well, a big bow has its place, mainly in the 80s, but it shouldn't be the criteria. But it's interesting you said that you don't know what criteria you're being marked against, which actually I think is actually a big disadvantage, because if you know the brief that you're supposed to follow, then you should be held up accountable for mistakes that you've made that don't fit the criteria or the brief. If you're asked to produce a garment with 5 pockets minimum, it should have 5 pockets.
Absolutely, but the briefs are just that, they are very brief. When we got the briefs, they have the requirements are there, and it's clear that over the seasons that people have chosen to ignore them and have paid the price for ignoring them. But the instructions are fairly brief to begin with. So, but going back to this bit about echoing things in different parts, it was particularly Stuart's outfit, wasn't it? Which was the blue skirt with the square pockets on that weren't actually pockets. And he did actually carry through some of the same coloured binding that was around the pockets on the top. But they did look a bit like 2 separate garments. And that's something I try to do. I try to marry my tops and bottoms and carry details through. But, 90 minutes, it's not, it's a lot. So it's a big ask.
I've said it before, it would take me 90 minutes to come up with an idea, never mind actually put it together. I mean, my hat's off to everybody who's taken part in any of these challenges, because the minute you've got a presenter, producer, you've got your camera staff, and somebody going, you've got 1 hour left. I mean, immediately that's your stress levels have gone up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's clear in some of these transformation challenges, and it happened to me on a number of occasions. It got to an hour, and I still didn't have a final plan as to what I was going to do. I was just making it up as I was going along. It's a really hard one to do.
How did you feel when you're doing either the pattern challenge at the beginning or the made to measure, and then they come up with you've got 1 hour or 30 minutes to go? How did you feel then?
Well, panic starts to set in, when it gets, you've got 30 minutes left. They actually film the slots, the bits with the presenters doing, you've got an hour left, as we're going through, not necessarily when you've got an hour left. So maybe at one point when you've got 2 hours left, you hear somebody saying, you've got an hour left, because they're filming that little snippet to put in later. But we were told, as time progressed, we weren't really allowed to have timers with us, and I think they've become a lot more relaxed now than they were in our program. But we couldn't take clocks with us, and
You couldn't?
No, your ordinary watch you could take, but you couldn't take a timer type watch with you. And when I'd done my practice garments, I timed how long each section had taken, and I'd made notes, detailed notes, and I couldn't use that because, other than looking at my watch and thinking, looking at the watch and relating it to the time you've got left, didn't have access. Whereas I would have liked to have had a timer to see exactly where I was in the scheme of things, but we weren't allowed to do that.
So were you allowed to take in your practice notes then?
Yes, you took your notes with you.
Right,
yes.
right.
Yeah.
That takes time to read it as well, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely. And I had pages and pages and pages of them, because everything was detailed down to how everything took me to do. But
Absolutely.
it was not a lot of practical use when you get to it and you've got the time issue going on.
Exactly. Well, we'll move swiftly on to the made to measure. Now, this was using, recycled fabrics. They had 4.5 hours. It was a make do and mend challenge, and they had to create an outfit for a family occasion. So I'm going to go straight back to you, Janet. What were your thoughts about this particular challenge?
I thought it was an interesting one, because you'd be sourcing your own fabric for this one rather than relying on something else. We had one to do where we had to use old curtains or old household furnishings, and I enjoyed that. And you've got time to prepare and decide what you're going to do. So I thought it was an interesting challenge, and I definitely would have chosen something that was specifically easy to work with, because I don't want to make life any more difficult for myself than I have to. And that, I don't think that applied to everybody. I think some people chose more difficult things, particularly down the man, who made
Yeah.
that stunning thing with the t-shirts. When I saw his pile of 13 t-shirts, I couldn't believe what he was going to do. I couldn't imagine. And when you looked at the photograph of the finished top and you see the little strips that he'd cut, that was quite remarkable. But he must have practiced that down and, you know, done a lot of exercises with it, practicing doing it. And it was very effective.
Yeah. Alistair, what was your thoughts of this challenge?
I wholeheartedly agree with who was championed at the end. I thought, in actual fact, that was out of them all, that was my favorite garment. It's when you're what my biggest bugbear is that when you're reusing, especially garments that you've maybe picked up from a charity shop, or they're very, very special and stuff like that, it does limit your creativity, because you want to treat the garment or the pieces of fabric with the ultimate respect, but that compromises the end look of what you're actually going for. I wasn't a fan, like, for instance, on Luke's one, when they all took wedding dresses. I wasn't a fan of that one either. But I thought a lot of the ideas, yeah, I mean, denim, really, really safe. It's a really, really safe thing, and that has been done like so many times. And for instance, like Kit's one this time, it did fit quite nicely over the bust area. It was nice right here. However, at the side seams, yeah, there was a bit of gape. It wasn't quite I think in that terms, it was that garment had been practiced the way it had been practiced, and there was no necessarily scope for being able to take it in, because it altered the pattern or the panels, the shapes of them, because there was I think when it looked, there was a whole side panel there going down in the middle, which if you had a side seam there, that would be quite an easy fix, but all the extra was towards the back.
Yes.
So yeah, I found it quite limiting, just purely based on the fact that when you're reusing old garments, it's a bit more like an extended transformation challenge for me. It wasn't necessary. I think if the brief had been under this umbrella, go out and source either vintage fabric, or for instance, go to a charity. The thing was, go to a charity shop and find fabric, or find fabric that either somebody's giving away or it needs to be reused. That this should have been maybe some caveat in.
But again,
she had another call. Whoever it is very persistent. I think that's her milkman wanting his money. But literally, yeah, I think it could have been done in a better, because obviously we've seen them. They choose a pattern at home. Yes. They practice that pattern, but it's like in this instance, it's like how do you practice this? Because essentially, you can't really practice this at home, because all the precious jeans or little girls' dresses or whatever it is that you've got to make the final piece on the show, you can't practice with those, because those are the things for the show. So
well, yeah, Jess in particular, that was our mum's workwear. Because of our backstory, she would have only had maybe one or two of those tops for work. So she wouldn't, like you say, wouldn't have been able to practice. And if you practice in something like a calico, then you wouldn't necessarily have the same effect, because Ola, with you've touched on corduroy and velvet. Ola used velvet on hers, which I thought, as soon as I saw the velvet, I was thinking, oh my goodness gracious me. You're using velvet, which is just, like you said earlier on, has its own challenges in itself. But hers was a particularly good fit. She did very, very well. They commented about a piece on the yoke, but hey ho, I felt sorry for Gaynor, because she cut out on her skirt, she cut out the triangle the wrong way, and so therefore wasn't able to use it in the way she wanted. And that's one of those things, because she was using that particular fabric. It was of course, it couldn't be the plain one, could it? She couldn't bring anything else in. She didn't have any more fabric. So you've really, it goes back to really planning.
You remember a few seasons ago where they brought all the vintage tablecloths, and we were divided when we critiqued that one.
Yes.
Just purely and simply because, but then I come round to the fact I've got things of my grand's, which when I was a little boy sitting, outside in the garden with all my grand's friends, being spoilt rotten with, being shoved 50p's in my pocket and thinking I was rich, and then sitting there eating, scones and all that kind of thing. And it's, those are memories. And when I, even if I just take it out the drawer and I look at it, it's like, I would have thought that if they, but then again, that goes back to a transformation challenge.
It does.
I just thought it was a bit unfair that to be a main challenge, because it's very emotive for one, and second of all, the whole practicing thing, it's like you just don't know. And for instance, in the denims, some of those denims, the practice denim that you use might be 100% cotton. Most denims now, just because of our body shapes and the styles, have a lot of stretch in them. So you end up going and using it, and once you get a bit of stretch and you cut into a stretch fabric, and it can grow.
Yeah.
Can we just go back to Kit's denim dress?
Yes.
Excuse me. Because I would beg to differ with Alistair about how easy it was to alter. Because I have a photograph in front of me of the back of the dress. This is a made-to-measure challenge. And whilst we have the basic measurements of the individual models that we were going to use, the whole essence of the thing is getting your garment to fit that model. And there are seams on the back that he could have altered. And what he should have done, I think, is get to his dress being mostly made and then check the fit on the model, because there are places where he could have altered it because the side panels had seams in them.
Yeah, they could have been entered. What I was meaning was, if it had a side seam, it would have been easier for him to directly alter it.
Yeah.
My point of it was that there was a strong side panel.
Yeah.
It was around about 5 inches thick going down each side, and the distribution of the actual weight in the pattern from when he had actually cut it out, all of the gape was actually towards the rear. So all of that needed clearing out. But
if you look at the images of his garment in the side panel, there is a seam down the middle of it, down towards the back. There is a seam where he could have made an alteration on it. I took some screenshots last night instead of going to sleep. But and the whole point of this challenge, as I say, is a made to measure, and it needs to fit the model that's there. But his dress was my favourite, and I think the use of the jeans is a good one, because it doesn't have that emotional content. He did say he'd used all his friends' jeans. I have piles of jeans that I've accumulated from places, and I reuse them quite a lot, make things out of, and it removes the emotional content. And I think, I agree with you, it's much more difficult for those people who did have emotional attachments to some of the garments that they were using, and that would be very difficult. And like you say, the people who the one with the workwear top and the dress that went with it, that would be very difficult. And I thought it was a shame that she was picked up on the frill round the bottom, because the original stitching that she didn't it looked very homespun, I think you might say.
Yeah, that was just it was a summer dress with the peplum.
It was Jess, wasn't it? Was it Jess?
Yeah, she'd run out of time. At home, she would have hemmed that beautifully.
Yeah.
What she did was she zigzagged it really badly.
Yeah.
And then when she put it on the model, she just hacked it off. She might better if she'd used pink and scissors.
Yes.
A better finish, shall we say. The other one that was quite interesting, and Stuart always pushes the boundaries, was Stuart, because he used a jacket for the skirt and a shirt for the top, but he had the sleeves as the straps, and it was a very, very out there garment, I thought.
Yeah.
What did you think, Alistair?
It's very sort of like, the ilks of like Comme des Garçons and, a lesser known sort of one like Costume National and those types of things, that play on those. Also, for instance, Martin Margiela and the Antwerp Six, and de Meulemeister and things like that. They've played with these sort of concepts for many, many, many years. It's always a crowd pleaser when you're using that. I thought the garment, in essence, I thought was very simple. But that's not to say that simple doesn't have high impact. I thought it was very clever. I think in terms of what he produced the week before, which we thought he should have gotten a lot more credit for, that denim trench hybrid.
Yes.
You know, I think was beautifully put together and visually from what we could see on the television. So I thought that, yeah, as concepts go, I did think it was, compared to everybody else's, I think it was a little bit safe. Jess's, for instance, just a note to everybody sort of like out there, raw edges very seldom ever work. That there is a reason why, if you went into a shop and you're the customer and it has a raw edge, however, saying that, if it's a cut off denim, that's the style of a denim. If it's a jersey and it's a cotton loopback jersey and they've left the edge raw, sometimes that actually happens. Those are fine because they're not fabrics that are going to shed or look really tired and ugly after a year. There was a famous designer that was Stockton Liberties called Bora Askew, and all of his garments, it was chiffon and it was silk chiffon, and everything was raw edge. I tell you what, it went on the shop floor on the Monday. By the Thursday, those dresses looked an absolute mess. We actually had to give them a haircut, because we couldn't actually sell them in the state that they were.
Right. Yeah.
Always try and avoid a raw edge. If you're going to use a decorative stitch on one of the domestic sewing machines and then cut it off, that's a much better way of having a really flat edge if that's the look you're going for. Because some people who want a flat edge and don't want the bulk, they think, oh, I don't know what to actually do. I don't know how to seal I don't know how to, finish it. If you do a little embroidery stitch on the sewing machine, even sometimes a really tight satin stitch or even a zigzag stitch will hold the fabric enough just for you to leave that raw.
Yeah. I think you've got to keep it, haven't you, somehow. So this week's garment of the week was Dan's, and Jess went home this week, which I don't think she was too surprised about, having come in the bottom of both the pattern challenge and the transformation challenge. Janet, did you agree with garment of the week and who went home?
Yes, I think I did. At the end of the day, I thought Dan's outfit was admirable, especially when you look at it very closely. I also very much like Kaz's outfit, although I think the raw edge thing on there put me off it a little bit, especially there were lots of whiskery bits sticking up at the top, but she got the fit absolutely bang on. I thought that was really good. But in general, yes, I did agree. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Alistair? Did you agree with?
I did. I thought I've written something at the back here. So I actually did write. So at the bottom here, I did write, as I was watching the show, I put Dan and I put garment of the week and I circled it. So I knew that was the person I chose to win it. And then I put here on the money. Then I put loser. I put Jess and I put on the money again. So this week I actually got it right. Don't always get it right. But what I did say, I actually wrote myself a little note on the back, which you can see here. It's really interesting. So, for instance, obviously, now we're getting, people are starting to, it's wheedling down. And you get to know a bit of personalities, and you get to know when people who have done really well in the previous weeks the edit starts to see where the judges are nipping a little bit, because they were nipping a little bit at Kaz this week. And she had some really great weeks before. I've just written down here, I have a suspicion, I wonder whether or not Dan might actually be the contestant who may win. And the reason I say that is because obviously his job in which he does costume for, the costumes he's having to make they've got to be visual, performers have got to be able to move. So that's a very different concept for like theatre costume and film costume. Totally different things.
Yeah.
Film costume, the camera's on it. And I think he's now realizing, actually, I've got all these skill sets and he's now homing them in. So I think he's a really dark horse that the other ones who have maybe in the edit have been championed and pushed. I think Dan's going to come. He's come right out of the wings, and I think he's going to do really well.
Yeah. Excuse me. I also think by this stage, we're getting towards the halfway stage now, that they're starting to have an idea of who they think is going to win and who they might like to win as well, because they've got to look at the end result, and they want to produce a final that's interesting and cliffhanging. And they're starting to have an idea, to formulate in their minds how they want it to go. I've always felt that all the way as we went along. I think in our series, there were 3 people who were definitely better sewers, but would have made a not very interesting final. And I think they're looking towards the end game now.
Yes, it goes back to being an entertainment program rather than it being a sewing program, which is where, you know, it's like yin and yang, and either people love it or hate it. But it still, you know, creates an interesting week. Next week is is it the dreaded Children's Week?
We quite enjoyed it last year, Kim.
We enjoyed it, Janet.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I didn't enjoy mine. My little model was absolutely delightful, but all she wanted to do was talk. And I had to ask them to take her away so I could actually concentrate on what I was doing. But now they do take them away more. But in the earlier days, they left them sitting next to you for quite a long time, and it was quite off-putting.
Put the child in a cupboard until I'm ready for the next measuring.
And I felt very bad because she clearly wanted to be on television.
Oh, bless her, yes. But we have got Children's Week next week, so it is going to be dungarees, maternity wear changed into playwear, and costumes inspired by childhood dreams. So we'll all wait with bated breath as to what that'll hold. But before we go, I just want to announce the winners for last week's giveaway, and they are, now we've got 3 giveaways from Alistair and 1 from Lizzie, but the 4 winners, and remember, you have to be in the UK, but regardless, contact us, please. I have messaged everybody on YouTube who has been successful. It's Donna's Crafty Creations, Christine 8394, Mrs. Wheatley, and Susan Sheriff 540. So if you've already had a message, please just email me and then we'll sort out getting things to you. Janet, before we go, can I say a massive thank you, because you have stepped in at the last minute because we had to have a little reschedule, and it's been wonderful to hear your thoughts on your series 5, and it's always interesting for us to know what's happened in the back, you know, that we don't see, isn't it, Alistair?
It's very,
there is such a lot goes on behind the scenes that you don't see. Such a lot.
And would you do it again?
Tomorrow.
Would you really?
Tomorrow. If I had enough energy. I mean, it's quite a while since I did it. And yes, I would. I really enjoyed my time. I went on there with no expectations, not knowing what to expect at all. And I enjoyed every minute of it.
And I gather you do most of your sewing just for yourself now. But if anybody wants to get hold of you, shall we say, you are Janni, Janni Sews on Instagram, and I'll put the link there. Or Janet, is it Janet Poole on Instagram or Janni?
Janet Poole on Facebook, but Janni Sews on Instagram. I do talks. I've talked to most of the WIs in my neck of the woods, and I do. I teach a bit. I teach people how to use their sewing machines, but I do that for a company who sells sewing machines.
Oh, which who do you work for?
I work for Barn Yarns. Barn Yarns Centre. So if you buy a machine from them, chances are I will teach you how to use it.
Oh, Callum and the family are fantastic.
Yeah.
So if you're in that area, yes, I'd highly recommend that you go to Barn Yarns.
Yeah.
Very well. Yes. So hopefully we'll see you very soon. Thank you so much.
I have really enjoyed it. Thank you for asking me.
You're more than welcome.
It's been good fun.
Now, Alistair, you are regularly on Sewing Street, and we've got other things in the pipeline. ... And you've got your giveaway, but also for everyone to remember that if they want to make any purchases on the House of Alistair website, if they put in the code B, which is BEE2025, they'll get 15% off.
Yeah, and it even works on the sale goods because some young person hasn't told me what the buttons do on the back of house. It's a win-win for everybody, and we will be loading new stuff. Remember, we've got Visaline on there as well, so that really is something that you will make a saving on, because Visaline set the retail prices for us. We can't set those ourselves. So we've got interesting things like that. We've got bias bindings on there. We've got buttons on there. We've got lots of small little things. Or if you're looking for a simple sewing pattern, just to get somebody in the family, sorted, or it could be anything. We've got scrap bags. We've got all sorts. We've got the Holland and Sherry swatches. So if you want to do a quilted jacket all in the walls, you've got loads of things, tons and tons of things. We've even got dressmaking fabrics.
Exactly. So we will, Alistair and I'll see you next episode. And I think I'm not even going to say who it is. Well, just in case the schedule goes awry.
Yes.
But thanks again, Janet, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. And
It's a pleasure.
Okay. See you later, everybody. Bye-bye.